Hi everyone. Welcome to English Story School. Have you ever wondered what it truly means to be fearless? Not just in the face of danger, but in the face of history, uncertainty, and the weight of 1,000 lives counting on you. Imagine standing on the edge of a foreign land, with the ocean roaring behind you, your ships burning, and only one path forward, through the enemy. That's not a scene from a movie. That's the moment where a legend was born. His name was Tariq bin Ziyad, and this is the story of the fearless attacker, the conqueror of Spain. Part 1. The Rising Flame. Tariq bin Ziyad, radiyallahu anhu, was not born into the comforts of royalty. He didn't have the luxury of a golden spoon. His birth was marked by the rugged terrains of North Africa, where the sands whispered tales of warriors, but few dared to heed them. The Berber tribes, where he was raised, were not a place where one could live by the simplicity of mere survival. It was a land that taught strength, resilience, and grit, qualities that Tariq absorbed as part of his very being. His eyes were not just for seeing, they were for understanding. His ears did not simply listen. They interpreted the unspoken truths of the world. The battlefield was not just a place where men fought. For Tariq, it was an arena where strategy, faith, and intellect danced together to shape victories. His body was strong, but it was his mind that became his greatest weapon. While others fought with brute force, Tariq fought with purpose. Every battle he faced, every challenge that came his way, was an opportunity for him to prove his worth, not just as a warrior, but as a master tactician. As he grew, so did his legend. It was said that when Musa bin Nusair, the governor of Africa, looked at Tariq, he didn't just see a man, a soldier. He saw a force of nature, a storm waiting to break free. He knew that the time would come when someone with the audacity, the courage, and the mind of a true leader would be needed to bring about a revolution in distant lands. Spain, at the time, was ruled by the Visigoths, a kingdom clinging desperately to its fading power, a land ripe for change. And who better to ignite this change than the one man who had never feared the unknown? The brave do not wait for perfect moments. They make the moment perfect. This was the motto Tariq lived by, and it was this very philosophy that took him to the shores of Andalusia in 711 AD. He didn't hesitate. With only 7,000 soldiers, a mere handful compared to the vast army awaiting him in Spain, Tariq led the charge across the great blue Mediterranean Sea. It wasn't just a geographical crossing. It was the crossing of an entire legacy, one marked by faith and determination. The journey was far from easy. The Mediterranean waters tossed their ships like toys in the hands of the wind, and the sky seemed to conspire against them. The horizon, once bright with promise, now seemed full of uncertainty. Yet Tariq did not see these waves as obstacles. He saw them as stepping stones toward destiny. There was no fear in his heart. The only thing in his heart was faith, the faith that had guided him through countless battles and trials. This journey was no different. He wasn't just an invader. He was a liberator. He wasn't just crossing a sea. He was carving a path through history. His men, though fewer in number, followed him without hesitation. Their trust in Tariq was unwavering because they had seen his courage firsthand. They had felt the power of his belief, the conviction that no matter how insurmountable the odds, they were capable of victory. The courage of one man had transformed them into a brotherhood, a force unlike any other. When they landed at the shores of Spain, the landscape before them was both beautiful and intimidating. The land was vast and strange, and the mountains towered over them, as if to question their very presence. But Tariq, ever undeterred, looked toward the towering peaks and smiled. "The mountains are not here to stop us," he declared. "They are here to remind us that nothing worth having is easy to take. As he looked upon the lands that lay ahead, Tariq's mind raced with strategies and plans. His military genius was unmatched. He knew that it wasn't just about numbers. It was about understanding the enemy, using their weaknesses against them, and outsmarting them at every turn. The Visigoths, while large in number, were fragmented. Their kingdom was torn apart by infighting, and the loyalty of their army was questionable. This was Tariq's opportunity. With the sun setting behind him, casting a golden hue over the battlefield, he felt the weight of history on his shoulders. This was no longer just about conquest. It was about creating a legacy that would last for centuries to come. Tariq knew that this moment was pivotal, not just for him, but for his people and for the future of Islam. His faith in Allah, SWT, was his compass. Every step, every decision was made with the understanding that he was not alone. He had the support of the Almighty and the conviction that no matter the odds, he was destined for greatness. His men, too, were filled with that same belief. They were not mere soldiers. They were warriors of faith. Their hearts burned with the fire of belief, ready to set the world ablaze with their courage and their actions. The bravest warriors are those who charge into battle with faith in their hearts and courage in their souls, Tariq thought as he gazed at the horizon, knowing the path ahead would be filled with challenges. The world would soon witness the rise of a conqueror who did not fear the unknown, who did not hesitate in the face of adversity. Tariq bin Ziyad, Radi Allahu anhu, had arrived, and the flames of victory were about to be ignited. His journey was not just a passage through lands, but a journey that would change the course of history forever. With his first step on foreign shores, Tariq was no longer just a soldier. He was the embodiment of what it meant to rise against all odds, to challenge the status quo, and to break free from the shackles of fear. His journey had just begun, and the world would never be the same again. Part 2. The fire behind. They say great men burn their bridges to move forward, but Tariq bin Ziyad, radiallahu anhu, he burned his ships, quite literally. As the waves of the Mediterranean crashed against the shores of Gibraltar, marking their arrival in the land of the Visigoths, Tariq ordered his men to set their ships aflame. The crackling of the fire was not just the sound of wood burning. It was the sound of hesitation being erased from history. Behind you is the sea, before you, the enemy. There is no turning back, Tariq declared, his voice unwavering, his resolve unshaken. This act wasn't madness. It was a declaration, a bold statement that they were no longer travelers in an unknown land. They were conquerors, and there would be no retreat. The fire that consumed the ships mirrored the fire burning in their hearts. It was the fire of a man who had come to prove that belief, not strength, was what would win this battle. A fire that would forever scorch the earth in the annals of history. His soldiers, men who had followed him across the tumultuous seas, looked at the flames in silent awe. Some feared what lay ahead. Others, emboldened by their leader's courage, felt their hearts fill with the same unshakable conviction. Their ships were gone. They could not return. The enemy was in front of them. The land was hostile, and survival would demand the ultimate sacrifice. Yet Tariq's spirit did not falter. His gaze was fixed, not on the flames behind him, but on the horizon ahead. It was a horizon full of promise, full of destiny. The future was not about safety. It was about honor. It was about the struggle for a cause far greater than their own lives. Spain, at the time, was ruled by King Roderick, a man with a massive army, a leader who believed that no one could challenge his rule. His pride was as colossal as his army. The odds were laughable, absurd even. Tariq's forces, a mere 7,000 men, were dwarfed by the might of Roderick's vast numbers. But history does not bow to numbers. It bows to belief. And Tariq had a belief that was more powerful than anything the Visigothic forces could muster. Tariq was not just a warrior. He was a master tactician. The land before them was rough and treacherous, full of mountains that seemed to rise like giants from the earth. But to Tariq, these challenges were not obstacles. They were opportunities. Each ridge was a vantage point. Each valley was a trap waiting to be set. His military brilliance was a blend of speed, deception, and unrelenting fury. His strategy was poetry, his tactics a symphony of precise strikes, luring his enemies into the very jaws of defeat. The battle for Andalusia was not just a clash of armies. It was a clash of wills. And Tariq, with his unwavering faith in Allah, SWT, and his sheer determination, made it clear that his will was stronger than anything standing in his path. Every time Tariq moved his troops, it was like watching the art of war unfold in real time. The initial shock of their arrival was enough to disorient the Visigothic forces, but Tariq's brilliance ensured that their disorientation turned into terror. He knew that the Visigoths would underestimate him. They thought him just another invader, a warrior with no strategy, no real skill. They thought wrong. Tariq's army advanced quickly, surprising the enemy with their speed and precision. They were not fighting like a typical army. They fought with the ferocity of men who had nothing to lose but everything to gain. The Visigothic forces, unprepared for this storm, struggled to match Tariq's pace. Every strike from Tariq's forces was like thunder breaking the silence of the mountains. His soldiers were fearless, and their attacks were relentless. The roar of their battle cries echoed through the valleys, shaking the very ground beneath them. As Tariq led his men through the rugged terrains of Andalusia, he never once faltered. His mind was always calculating, always 5 steps ahead of his enemies. He knew that if he could break their spirit, victory would be his. And so, his attacks were not just tactical, they were psychological. Each battle was designed to unnerve the Visigoths, to make them question their own strength and their leader's ability to protect them. Tariq wasn't just fighting for land. He was fighting to break the will of a kingdom. The longer the campaign continued, the more Tariq's legend grew. His enemies began to speak his name with a mixture of fear and respect. They knew that his tactics were like nothing they had ever encountered before. His attacks were fast, furious, and unpredictable, leaving the Visigoths reeling with each encounter. The name, Tariq bin Ziyad Radi Allahu Anhu, began to resonate across the lands, and with every victory, his resolve only strengthened. In one pivotal battle, Tariq's forces took a small Visigothic garrison by surprise. It was a crucial victory, a stepping stone toward the larger campaign. As the garrison fell, Tariq stood victorious among his men. The fire in his heart burned brighter than ever. He raised his sword high in the air, not in a gesture of boastfulness, but in a sign of unity, a sign that they had made their mark in history. "We are not here for conquest," Tariq said, his voice steady and filled with unwavering conviction. "We are here to bring justice, to bring light to the darkness. And no force on earth can stop us from fulfilling our destiny." The soldiers cheered, their spirits lifted by Tariq's words. The fire behind them, the fire that burned their ships, was now a fire that would light the way forward. They were not invaders. They were warriors of faith, and their fight was not just for survival. It was for a future that they could not yet see, but one that they knew in their hearts was destined to be theirs. With each passing day, the flames of Tariq's army grew brighter. His leadership became the beacon that guided them through the darkness. And though the challenges ahead were immense, one thing was certain. Tariq bin Ziyad, Radi Allahu Anhu, and his fearless warriors were unstoppable. They had crossed the sea, they had burned their ships, and there would be no turning back. Part 3. The Unseen Strength. The Battle of Guadalete was more than just a clash of armies. It was a storm, a moment where fate and courage collided on the dusty plains of Spain. King Roderick, with his pride and arrogance, brought a force nearly 10 times the size of Tariq bin Ziyad's radiallahu anhu army. His soldiers, armed and confident in their overwhelming numbers, marched forward as though victory was a guarantee. But Tariq, with his 7,000 warriors, was not intimidated. What Tariq brought to the battlefield was something that could not be measured in numbers or weapons. He brought unity, an unbreakable bond forged through shared hardship and unwavering faith. He brought fire, a fire that burned not only in the hearts of his men, but in the very air around them. This wasn't just a battle for land. It was a battle for something greater, something timeless. It was a battle for light, for justice, for the truth that had been hidden in the shadows. Under the banner of justice, under the eternal echo of La ilaha illallah, Tariq's men fought with a purpose that could not be defeated. The battlefield, with its scorching sun and cloudless sky, thundered with war cries that sent shivers through the earth. The sound of clashing steel rang out like a symphony of fate, each blow a note that reverberated through time. In the midst of all this chaos, the whispers of destiny could be heard. It was not the clash of swords that would decide the battle. It was the force of belief, the strength of will, the unseen power that resided within the soul of every man who fought alongside Tariq. The strength of a warrior is not in his sword, but in his soul, Tariq once said. And in that moment, those words took on a life of their own. As Tariq rode among his soldiers, his eyes unwavering and his presence commanding, he did not see himself as a general above his men. He was with them, shoulder to shoulder, in the very heart of the storm. He bled with them, prayed with them, stood beside them as they faced an enemy whose might seemed insurmountable. Tariq's leadership wasn't just a title. It was a pulse, a heartbeat that synchronized with those around him. His action spoke louder than any command. His bravery, his courage, his unshakable faith were not abstract concepts. They were tangible forces that flowed through every soldier who followed him. In the midst of the battle, when despair threatened to take root, it was Tariq's presence that reminded them of their purpose. His leadership was the fire that kept their spirits burning even when the odds seemed impossible. As the battle raged on, Tariq knew that the key to victory wasn't simply in defeating the enemy. It was in breaking their will. King Roderick's army, despite its vast numbers, was not invincible. In fact, they were fragile, and Tariq could see it. His army, though outnumbered, fought with a determination that could not be quenched. Every strike, every maneuver was calculated, not just for victory, but for a deeper purpose. Tariq knew that every swing of his sword, every step taken forward, was a step closer to the moment when the Visigothic forces would crumble, not because of the weight of their army, but because of the strength of their spirit. And then it happened, the moment that would change the course of history. It was like lightning across the plains, unexpected, yet undeniable. Roderick's army began to falter. At first it was subtle, a hesitation here, a retreat there. But soon, that hesitation spread like wildfire. The Visigoths, who had once thought of themselves as invincible, began to crack. Tariq's forces, relentless and undeterred, continued to press forward with unyielding force. They were not just fighting with weapons. They were fighting with the power of belief. They were fighting with the strength of a cause that transcended this world. The battle, which had seemed so one-sided at first, turned in an instant. King Roderick's soldiers, once filled with confidence, were now filled with doubt. They were not just fighting an enemy. They were fighting the very fabric of their beliefs. They were fighting the will of a warrior whose strength came from something far greater than weapons or numbers. It came from his faith, from the unity of his men, from the unshakable belief that they were destined for victory. As the Visigothic forces crumbled, Tariq's army surged forward, pushing the enemy back with every step. The roar of Tariq's soldiers filled the air, their cries echoing like thunder over the battlefield. In that moment, the fate of Spain was sealed. The land, which had once been under the rule of a powerful king, was now cracked open by the sheer force of Tariq's will. The great walls that had once seemed impenetrable now lay in ruins, and in their place stood the conquerors, not because of their size, but because of the power within them. As the battle came to an end, Tariq stood amidst the fallen, his sword dripping with the blood of battle. His face, though marked by the trials of war, held a look of quiet triumph. He had not just won a battle, he had proved a point. The strength of a warrior lies not in the sword he wields, but in the soul that drives him. And Tariq bin Ziyad, Radi Allahu Anhu, had shown the world that when faith and determination combine, no army, no matter how large, could stand against it. In the end, the Battle of Guadalete wasn't just a military victory. It was a victory of the spirit. Tariq's victory was not one of bloodshed alone. It was a victory of belief, of unity, of a cause that transcended the battlefield. And as the dust settled over the plains of Spain, one thing was certain. Tariq bin Ziyad's name would echo through the ages, forever etched in the history of those who fought not just for land, but for something far greater. Part 4. The Dawn of Al-Andalus. The fall of the Visigothic kingdom marked the beginning of an era, a new chapter in history. It wasn't just a conquest of land, but the dawn of a new civilization, a new world that would forever alter the course of Europe and the Muslim world alike. This was the birth of Al-Andalus, a land that would become synonymous with enlightenment, art, and culture. But this transformation wasn't built on the ashes of destruction. Tariq bin Ziyad, Radiallahu anhu, didn't pillage the land, he planted seeds. Seeds of knowledge, culture, and coexistence. He sowed the ground for a future that would stand as a testament to the power of faith and vision. Al-Andalus, the land that would thrive under Muslim rule, wasn't born in one battle, one victory, or one campaign. It was born in the hearts of those who believed in something greater. It was born in the spirit of unity, peace, and the pursuit of knowledge. Cities, once broken and torn by the ravages of war, began to bloom. The silence that had once fallen over the land was replaced by the sounds of learning, of discourse, of progress. The streets of Córdoba, Seville, and Granada buzzed with the energy of intellectual curiosity, where scholars of all faiths gathered to exchange ideas. The seeds Tariq planted grew into a magnificent garden of knowledge, where every branch reached for the sky, and every leaf became a symbol of intellectual and cultural awakening. Under Tariq's leadership, the city of Al-Andalus became a beacon of learning, a lighthouse in the dark sea of ignorance. Libraries began to emerge, vast repositories of knowledge that would light the way for generations to come. Spain, once a land steeped in division and darkness, now became a land of light, where reason, science, and art flourished. This transformation wasn't just the result of military might. It was the result of a vision ignited by the flame of one fearless man. Tariq didn't see himself as a conqueror of land. He saw himself as a servant of faith, a guardian of justice, and a leader who would lead by example, not by force. Greatness isn't in conquering lands, it's in awakening hearts. This was Tariq's guiding principle. He didn't seek power for power's sake. He didn't long for riches, nor did he desire the luxury of a throne. His greatness wasn't measured in gold or titles. It was measured in the lives he touched, in the hearts he inspired, and in the minds he awakened. His legacy was not built on the wealth he accumulated, but on the people he uplifted and the changes he wrought in the world around him. Tariq remained humble. His victories, both on and off the battlefield, never clouded his vision. He didn't seek the accolades of kings or the praise of men. His purpose was never about personal glory. It was about the greater good, about leaving a mark on the world that would resonate through the ages. He was a servant of faith, first and foremost, and that faith led him to become a symbol of fearless leadership, a leader who sought not personal glory, but the welfare of those he led and the people he served. Despite his monumental achievements, Tariq never claimed a throne, nor did he ever seek the luxuries of kingship. His reward wasn't gold or titles. It was something far greater. His reward was something eternal. His name etched into the annals of history. Tariq, that name, simple yet powerful, would forever be remembered. His legacy would be immortalized not just in history books, but in the very landscapes he had conquered. Gibraltar, the towering mountain that stood as a guardian between Africa and Europe, would bear his name forever. Jabal Tariq, the mountain of Tariq. Tariq's legacy wasn't just a political or military one. It was one of inspiration. It was a legacy of faith in action, a legacy that proved that true power didn't come from the sword, but from the heart. His name wasn't just written in the stones of buildings or the pages of history. It was written in the sky above, in the very land that had once belonged to his enemies. His story was one of unwavering belief in the mission, the cause, and the path he had chosen. It was a story that transcended time and space, a story that would inspire countless generations to come. As the days passed and the dust settled over the mountains and plains of Al-Andalus, it was clear that Tariq's legacy was not just of military victories, but of a transformation, a revolution of thought, culture, and progress. His influence extended far beyond the battlefield. Under his watch, the people of Spain would experience a renaissance of sorts, a period of intellectual and cultural flourishing that would echo throughout history. While his name was etched into the stone of Gibraltar, his true legacy was carved into the hearts of those who followed him. They were not just his soldiers. They were his disciples in faith, in knowledge, and in courage. They would carry his message forward long after his time. His example of leadership, of humility, of service to something greater would inspire countless others to follow in his footsteps. Greatness isn't in conquering lands, it's in awakening hearts. These words would echo through the halls of Al-Andalus, reverberating across time and space. And as the sun set on the land of the Visigoths, it rose on a new era, an era that would forever be remembered as the dawn of Al-Andalus, the dawn of a golden age that was ignited by the flame of one fearless man, Tariq bin Ziyad, radiyallahu anhu. Part 5. The Legacy That Lives On. Centuries have passed since the time of Tariq bin Ziyad, radiyallahu anhu. Empires have risen and mighty ones have fallen. Yet, through it all, one name remains etched in the fabric of history, Tariq. His legacy, timeless and powerful, continues to echo across the ages, carried by the winds of time as though it were a war cry still reverberating across the battlefields of history. Tariq's name still echoes. Tariq did not seek immortality. He sought purpose. He sought to ignite a flame that would burn long after the fires of his battles had faded. His name wasn't inscribed on the golden thrones of empires, nor was it built upon the riches of victory. It was carved in the hearts of those who believed, in the souls of those who followed him. not because of his might, but because of his unwavering resolve, his unmatched courage, and his boundless faith. His legacy is not defined by the lands he conquered, but by the transformation he sparked. He taught us that bravery is not the absence of fear, but the decision to press on despite it. Fear is a natural companion of the courageous. It walks beside them, but it does not dictate their path. Tariq was not without fear, but he was resolute. When he and his army burned their ships on the shores of Gibraltar, the flames did not just consume the ships. They consumed their retreat, their hesitation, and any thought of turning back. They burned the very idea of defeat. He taught us that fear is a shadow, and the light of determination can banish it. He showed us that true leadership is not about domination or control, but about inspiration. A leader does not stand above others, commanding them like pawns on a chessboard. No, a true leader walks ahead, lighting the path for others to follow. Tariq led by example. He stood in the front lines, fought beside his soldiers, bled alongside them, and inspired them to rise above their own limits. His leadership was not a title, it was a calling. It was the fire in his eyes, the strength in his heart, and the unwavering faith that he instilled in his people. He led not with force, but with the strength of his belief. A true leader walks ahead, not above. These words ring truer than ever today, especially when we face challenges that seem insurmountable. When we feel overwhelmed by doubts, burdened by obstacles, or crushed by the weight of our own fears, we must remember the man who crossed the seas with just a handful of soldiers. He didn't conquer Spain with sheer numbers. He conquered it with his unshakable will. He didn't rely on the size of his army. He relied on the depth of his vision. The power of belief is far mightier than the power of numbers. Tariq bin Ziyad didn't just conquer a land. He conquered despair. He didn't just bring victory to his army. He brought a new vision to the world. He showed that the impossible could be achieved with determination, faith, and unity. He turned the seemingly hopeless into the possible, and in doing so, he became a living embodiment of fearless vision. He proved that one man, armed with nothing but belief and a sword, could change the course of history. Tariq's journey didn't end with the conquest of Spain. His legacy was just beginning. His story, his courage, and his vision transcended time, becoming a guiding light for those who would come after him. We can all draw strength from his example, especially when we find ourselves standing at the edge of our own Gibraltar. The moments in life when we face the unknown, the terrifying, and the uncertain. When a mountain seems insurmountable, when the odds appear impossible, and when the world feels too heavy to bear, we must look to Tariq. His story reminds us that victory isn't about the obstacles in our way. It's about the courage to move forward despite them. It's about burning the ships of doubt, leaving behind the comfort of fear, and marching toward the future with courage blazing in our hearts. Tariq did not just conquer Spain. He conquered the very notion of defeat. He turned impossibility into reality. And as we stand on the precipice of our own battles, we must remember his legacy. When we face challenges that feel too great to overcome, remember that the man who crossed seas, burned ships, and changed the course of history did so not with a vast army, but with an unshakable will and an unwavering belief in his mission. And so, if you ever find yourself standing at the edge of your own Gibraltar, uncertain and afraid, look to Tariq. Burn your doubts, ignite your courage, and march forward into the unknown. For greatness isn't given to those who wait for the perfect moment. It's taken by those who make the moment perfect. With that said, thanks for watching, and until next time.